The topic of today is how should we meet our tests? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. Last week we considered Satan's temptation of Jesus in the wilderness after his baptism by John. We discussed the question, does Satan exist? All of us experience temptation of one kind or another in our lives. Some of us frequently, others only occasionally. Whether temptation comes to us from our own subconscious or from outside ourselves is secondary to the fact that it does come and that we must deal with it. More important then is the question how to deal with it. In fact, how to deal with tests of any kind. Martin Luther flung an ink pot at the devil who had appeared to test him. A dark stain on the wall of Luther's cell is pointed out to tourists in support of this story. Unfortunately, our trials are not often so summarily dismissed. As a fellow monk once said to Swami Kriyananda, speaking of Satan, "If only I could get my hands on him." Jesus, during his temptations in the wilderness, overcame them and thereby set an example for all time by clinging the more determinedly to God. As Paramahansa Yogananda used to say, darkness cannot be driven out of a room with a stick. Once you turn on the light, however, the darkness will vanish as though it had never been. Jesus manifested this principle. The Bible tells us, therefore, that at last the devil leaveth him, and behold, angels came and ministered unto him. In the Bhagavad Gita, the point is clarified further by the added explanation that there are three qualities in human nature: sattvic, or spiritually elevating, rajasic, or ego-activating, and tamasic, or spiritually darkening. It is this triune aspect of human nature that the third chapter refers to with the words, "As fire is hidden by smoke, as a mirror is dulled by rust, and as an embryo is enclosed in the womb, so is the indwelling self enveloped by desire." Yogananda explained that each of these examples describes one of the qualities or gunas. Sattva guna, that which elevates our consciousness, can be freed of any identity with ego by a little puff of meditation and right affirmation. Rajoguna, which embroils the ego in restless activity, can be worked off with a little more and a little longer effort. Tamoguna, embracing as it does such mental states as laziness and stupidity, can only be outgrown in time, since it inhibits even the desire of self-improvement. The example Jesus gave us was intended more for those in whom Sattva-guna is predominant. But if you yourself find elements in your consciousness that resist even the effort to cling to God in prayer and meditation, don't despair. Patience, as it has been well said, is the fastest path to God. As long as your efforts take you steadfastly in the right direction, you will come out right in time. Remember Yogananda's words, a saint is a sinner who never gave up. If, however, your nature impels you, even against your will, to move in the wrong direction, toward egoic desires and away from God, strive at least to detach yourself mentally from your wrong actions, which are induced by habit. The time will come when their own stored-up energy will tire and diminish. At that time, if you have not contributed to that energy by your consenting will, you will find it possible at last to redirect your energies more constructively.
Ti sarà finalmente possibile ridirigere le tue energie verso traguardi più costruttivi.
Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. In the oratory Christ Lives, written by Swami Kriyananda, there is a beautiful part called The Temptation of Christ, where Jesus gives a suggestion to all of us. He explains how to face the temptations of any kind. Jesus says to delusion, "Get thee behind me. Know you not our Father offers love in your stead? His gift of love to all is my only food. He is all I own. What does man need but him?" Then the darkness lifted. Love destroyed Satan's power. Then at last the Savior could begin bringing all to God. For he taught them in freedom, wanting naught in return. All he offered was perfect peace, perfect freedom of the soul. Jesus said in the chant, "God is all I love. He is all there is. Wise is he who says, I am wholly his." Maya replied, "God is all I fear. Lo, my throne of power, shaken by his love, was destroyed in that hour." Throughout all the world a new spirit was born. Jesus brought to men's hearts hope for those steeped in sin. This is a very beautiful part. In the Bible, the word sin mainly means wrong, failing the goal. Fail your goal. As if you're pointing an arrow and you miss your goal. You miss the center. So what is our goal? What is our main scope in life? It is to live in the presence of God. The temptation is something that, just like advertising, it cannot have an influence on you unless you open yourself to it. Maybe there is an advertisement and you look at it and you let yourself be fascinated by it. So temptation induces people to do something wrong, something that will distract you from your goal, and you will miss your scope. Sin can be in thought, words, or action, but anyway does not determine our state of consciousness. We will be, we are, will always be part of God. So the original sin does not exist. original good will exist. This is what we are in our highest consciousness. In the dream of Maya, Yogananda said, we dream to be not perfect, but soon the glory of God will be manifest to all. This is the spiritual path. This is what we want to do in our lives. So these error mistakes we might do bring us suffering and make us feel far from God. So how can we face the tests of our life? As Jesus suggested, remain in the love of God, and God will come to you and will support you. Love will come and will dissolve that delusion, and love will make you free. That happened to the famous Zaccheo from Jericho. He was in charge for taxes. He was very rich. And the temptation of richness, of course, moved him from his goal. He missed his main goal. He was almost a violent man, very greedy, and he didn't realize he missed his goal at all, completely. But people were speaking a lot about a certain Jesus of Nazareth. They spoke about his miracles. They said how gentle he was with everybody. It didn't matter the social position of anybody. So these sayings, these rumors, must have touched the consciousness of Zaccheo at the point that he desired to know this Jesus. So it did happen. Jesus one day entered the city of Jericho, and he was famous. People spoke a lot about his miracles, his divine teachings, about his preaching love for enemies. That was a big revolution for the time. So a big crowd was waiting for him. And also Zacchaeus went there to meet Jesus, but the crowd was so huge, so he ran forward. But it was not enough because he was pretty short. So he climbed a tree, they say a sycamore tree. And he tried to look for Jesus. In that moment, Jesus passed nearby. And when he was close to the tree, Jesus raised his gaze and said, Zaccheo, come down from the tree. I'm visiting your home now. So Zaccheo immediately ran down. He rushed home to prepare everything for the rabbi, for the master visiting him in short. And it was an incredible joy for him. In the meantime, Jesus was changing his heart, because this is how a master works. A master transmits his vibrations of peace, of consciousness. So not only a master gives teachings, but a master manifests this vibration that is transforming. And Zaccheo was transformed. Zaccheo stood up and said, Master, I will give half of my richness to poor people, and if I stole anything, I will give 4 times what I stole to that person. And Jesus answered, Zaccheo, salvation entered in your home today. I came to save those who lost themselves, those who were lost. Again, in the oratorio, Christ Lives by Swami Kriyananda, there is another part which has a beautiful words. To souls that were fallen. To souls that were fallen, he spoke of God's love and coaxed them with kindness to turn back again. Forsake, he said, the fulfillments of earth, for the comfort they bring you lasts hardly an hour. Again, we see in these words love that heals. But we have to look for that love, as Zacchaeus did. If Zacchaeus didn't climb that tree, Jesus was looking for him. Nothing happens by chance. Jesus knew how to find his loved ones, his disciples. And Jesus knew everything about Zacchaeus. But Zacchaeus needed to do his first step, look for Jesus. He had to want Jesus. If he didn't do that, Jesus wouldn't talk to him. So this is a very important aspect in our life. When we are tested, when there are difficulties, first of all, look for God. Do the first step. And that first step will help you to let go of the temptation to get angry, to react, to have rancor. These are terrible things which will miss your goal completely. These reactions will bring you so far from your goal. But remember, you can always repair to your mistakes. You can ask God, please help me, and you will see something will happen immediately. Another story from nowadays. Maybe it will be difficult for you to understand that a drug addict can be also the disciple of a great master. But this is my story. It is a story about a disciple of Paramahansa Yogananda. He was a drug addict and he couldn't stop. Because the problem of habits is that they are so strong. It's very difficult to get rid of a habit. It's possible, but you need so much commitment. So this young disciple spoke to his guru and he called him my invisible friend. So one day he was in a wood, he was there in despair, he wanted to stop having drugs and he was praying and praying. He said, I cannot stop, I cannot stop. After a while, he heard Yogananda. He felt like a deep breathing from Yogananda, where Yogananda said, okay, if you think so. In that moment, someone came and arrested the boy. So the boy found himself in prison with a big failure in his life, but he was surprised by something, that he felt an incredible love for his invisible friend. And he said, how is that possible? I lost my dignity, I lost my freedom, I lost respect for myself, but nothing can be between me and my invisible friend, the Guru. And he said in his soul, I love you, I love you. So he said, if to learn this lesson I had to pay this high price to be in prison, I think it's worth it. And, well, when we have a good magnetism, we attract good things in our lives. So he found, luckily, a good lawyer. And this lawyer was able to postpone his trial. And he was able to postpone it for 6 months. Because if he appeared in front of a judge in that moment, it wasn't so good. So, in 6 months, he was able to let go of the drugs. And he also started some social working. But he was a very good soul. So when he appeared in front of the judge shook hands with him. He said, my compliments because you overcame your dependence and you really behaved yourself. And this is a beautiful story. Again, in difficulties, it's very easy when you are tested to forget of God. You are absorbed by difficulties. We are worried, we are in fear. Why did it happen to me? And so on. But if in that very moment you live in the presence of God, you remember God, you will see how easy it will be to face your tests. And you will feel the presence of God. Once, also Swami, who lived many tests, and it's true that people like him live through many tests to show us how to face them. Think of Jesus tempted in the desert. Of course, Jesus was already realized. When you are in the bliss of God, can you really be tempted? Richness? You have all richnesses. So Yogananda in Ewa, in Autobiography of a Yogi, it's something difficult to explain, to understand. Yogananda explains it like this. When a master who is an incarnation of God on earth, there is a light shadow on his consciousness. So these masters can have little tests, some tests, but of course they're one with God. Jesus answered, and this answer was really important. He said, "Go back, get thee behind me." You see, that was enough. If you see your problems as huge and impossible to overcome, it's not possible. But if you think God can do anything, we have to answer as Jesus did. Get thee behind me. Know you not our Father offers love in your stead? So I wanted to share a story about Swami. He was on holiday, Swami Kriyananda. He got surgery to both hips. And sometimes when he moved in a bad way, he had a dislocation, a bad movement of the hips with an incredible pain. And it did happen that day. He was in a hotel. He called the reception, asking for help. Somehow he was able to climb to bed. And he had to be there for 1 hour for the ambulance to come. And when the ambulance came, they weren't able to open the door. He couldn't move from the bed. So it took another 1 hour, another hour again to go to the hospital. So more than 3 hours passed in pain. And you know what Swami Kriyananda said? Divine Mother, thank you. Because in spite of all, I feel love for thee. Isn't it beautiful? Just like that boy, he was in prison and he felt love for God. Swami said, if you keep this love in your heart, nothing will touch you, will be able to touch you. With every test I had, Yogananda said, now no one can take away my love for you. If we remain in that love, the storms of life won't touch us. And we will feel so free. The Master said, bring this truth with you. because when you leave this body, only the truth will be important to you. There is another chant, beautiful chant. We are going to listen to it in English as well, from the oratorio again, from the oratorio Christ Lives by Swami Kriyananda.
Quando le speranze umane aspirano a te, incendiano le foreste.
So Prem is reading now in Italian, and then we will listen it directly into English. In English.
Oltre ogni capacità umana, solo il tuo amore può colmare i nostri cuori. Oltre ogni capacità umana, solo il tuo amore può colmare i nostri cuori. La luce di Cristo che illuminò la terra dal cielo aprì per noi la porta interiore. A tutti coloro che amano vengono donate gioia e libertà eterna. Questa è una promessa. A tutti coloro che amano vengono donate gioia e libertà eterna.
So let's listen to this beautiful chant and words.